Hey, everybody, we are back and we're excited. So we have Victoria here, and it's Victoria Ostings. Victoria, so sorry, forgive me. Pronunciation again. I just had a complete senior moment.
That's all right.
Victoria, do you mind pronouncing it? So
Oh, yes. So it's Victoria Osting.
Osting. Thank you very much. I am so sorry. Victoria Osting. So she is the Senior Marketing Manager, Digital Analytics at HarperCollins Christian Publishing, and she is the voice of the Christian Encouragement for Women social media brand. She has over 6 years of digital analytics experience and is passionate about data and insights-driven decisions and strategy. So she will be using all of her expertise to help you in your data strategies today. So you're in for a good session. So Victoria, I am going to jump off and then you can jump on.
All right. Thank you so much. So yes, I am a data nerd. So bear with me while I talk about data because I'm going to get really excited, maybe more excited than you get about data. But hopefully by the end of the presentation, you'll be right there with me. You will be excited and kind of geeked out about data as well. So today we're going to be talking about the basics of website analytics. So why does it matter? Some basics about how to use it and a little bit about implementation. I didn't want to get too technical, but did want to talk a little bit about some of the implementation options. So let me see if I can get my slides to move here. Okay, perfect. So I just find this to be hilarious because it's accurate. So this little cartoon that says, don't worry, it's only marketers collecting our personal data so they can create more relevant advertising for us. Yep, this is what we do as marketers. We are trying to understand our audience, and sometimes it's a little creepy what we can find out, which is why there are many kind of legal regulations in place surrounding data and data privacy. So I want to start out by talking about what is marketing like without analytics. So let's assume you have a website and are marketing your book via social media, email, and paid advertising. Let's also assume that you don't currently utilize an analytics tool. If this is you, I'm guessing you likely don't know which marketing is driving the right people to your site. You don't really have a good way to tell what people are doing once they get to your site, or if they're even engaging with your site and the content on there, or what they're engaging most with. And so these are just kind of some of the pitfalls that we run into when marketing without having some kind of a data tool. So why website analytics is important is because that helps us go from this kind of blurry view on the left-hand side, which, I mean, I can kind of see there's some sky and some grass. The white is probably snow. Like I can make some assumptions, right, based upon the large breadth of what I'm seeing. But when we add website analytics and we use data to make decisions, instead of making decisions based upon kind of this blurry conjecture of what's probably happening, we see this crystal crisp, clear picture, and we can see, oh my goodness, there's actually people here, and it's 2 of them. And the mountains have all these ridges, and there's grass and kind of bumpy hills in the grass. So I just love this visual of how do we go from having this blurry data, what does it look like to have analytics? And it gives us this crisp, clear picture. I would much rather be navigating my path based upon the view on the right than trying to navigate those mountains based upon the view on the left. So what does analytics tell us? I think it's important to understand at the beginning, what can we learn from analytics before we start actually diving into strategy pieces. So analytics tools, there are multiple of them. There are a few that are most common, which we'll talk about a little bit later, but they are what tell us who came to our website, audience demographics, so age, gender, sometimes even things around like devices, locations, are they inside the US, what general area of the US? And again, we can't get too specific in some of these things because of what is called PII, which is personally identifiable information. So they're not going to tell you like someone's email address or their, specific kind of pieces, but we can get a good idea of who's our audience. And that aggregate is actually really important and really helpful. And we'll talk about that more later. We also, some of the tools will tell us about audience interests. So what else are these people interested in? Not just what are they doing on my site, but what else, what other types of products, types of content are they engaging with on the web? It also can tell us how they got here. And this is the way that we usually evaluate our marketing efforts, right? We can see what actually is driving traffic to our site. Is it those social media posts, our CPC ads we're paying for, our organic search, email? Where are people entering our site? So which pages do people land on most commonly? Is it our homepage? Is it a page about our book? Is it a blog post? Where is our like highest entry point on our website? And also, like, what other pages are people visiting right after that? It usually can tell you as well. And then what did people do when they got here? So kind of the who, how, where, and what is what analytics tools tell us. So what did people do? Did they visit multiple pages? Did they just like come look at one thing and leave? What pages did they visit? How long did they stay on those pages? And this can be really valuable information, especially when thinking about, if you have a purchase journey on your website, if you have, a blog post, like, are they spending enough time to actually read it, or are they just like, nope, not interested? Hopefully that's not the case. Hopefully you're seeing on your website when you dive into analytics that people are spending time there and reading your content. So we're going to dive into some of these a little bit deeper. So looking at learning about our audience, it's really important to check your audience insights, because this is what tells you if the right people are getting to your site. And it also will help you find new audiences you may not have known are interested in your content. So that's two incredibly valuable reasons to be checking your audience insights. If I'm marketing and, let's say I'm doing some CPC ads that I'm paying for, and I'm trying to hit a specific target demographic. Well, are those people actually who I'm reaching? Are they the people that are coming to my website from those ad campaigns? And then also, again, looking at what people might be interested in my content that I didn't think about. Maybe I think the people who are interested in my books are teens. Like maybe I write, teen kind of content, but I find out there's this whole group of, like maybe women in their like early 30s who are also interested in my content. That would give us a greater understanding of our audience, as well as greater opportunities to market, right? That's how it starts to inform strategy. So as I'm talking, I hope you're kind of starting to see how data can inform your marketing strategies as well. So most tools will give you information about age, gender, devices. Some tools provide you with the additional interests, as I mentioned. The screenshots on this page are from Google Analytics, which is a very popular analytics tool that we'll talk about again a little bit more later. But you can see some of the demographics around age and gender, and then that affinity category. These are those other things that that audience is interested in. So for example, this audience that I pulled this from, 4.66% of these people are also interested in cooking, and specifically 30-minute chefs. So these are probably people who don't have a ton of time to cook, and that kind of helps inform me of who they are. I also love seeing that the second affinity category down is book lovers. I mean, this is the kind of people we want to see coming to our websites, people who love books. It's also who we would expect to see coming to our websites if we're, talking about books on our site. So the next piece of what analytics tools will tell us is how people got here. So this is where we can evaluate our marketing strategies by seeing, again, which ads, emails, social posts are driving the most traffic. I want to know which marketing is not only driving traffic, but also driving engagement on my site. It's one thing to get people there, but it's another thing for them to actually like engage with content, to read multiple blog posts, to sign up for my email, to decide to download a free chapter that I have, whatever that might look like. I want to know, maybe I find out, and so the things you can start to see in here are like, maybe Pinterest is really great for driving people to want to download content, and maybe Facebook is really good for just getting people on there who are going to read a blog post, right? So you can start to parse out which platforms, which marketing, maybe people from my email are the people who are, when I send them back to my site, are actually going to purchase the book because they've been in the funnel a little bit. So again, starting to get some of those ideas of how can I strategize from what I'm seeing in my data. There we go. On the next piece is you can uncover what people are doing on your site. So you can use goals and events to track specific on-site actions. This does require some additional setup, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Most analytics tools out of the box don't necessarily have goals and events, but they are super simple to set up with some of the platforms. So things like Again, retailer link clicks, free downloads, filling out a contact form, watching a video. One of my favorite ones to be able to track is those retailer link clicks, because if I can tell people from Facebook are most likely to go to this retailer or are more likely to click on a retailer link than people from my email. You can start to make decisions based on that. Where am I spending my marketing dollars? Where am I spending my time when doing my marketing? So that's, again, how it informs strategy. So this graph shows that you can look at these things, goal completions, events over time, by days, weeks, months. And then I wanted to point out that the screenshot on the right, these are some of the, again, those things that you can track with events. So things like scroll tracking, time, file downloads, outbound link clicks. This is where you would get those retailer link clicks. So some of those different pieces there. So 3 important tips if you want to use your data for decisions. So we've talked a little bit so far about why data is important, what kinds of data can we even get from most of the tools that we have, and so how are we going to use this data for decision making is where we're headed. So the first piece is keep your data as clean as possible. And what I mean by this is trying to make sure that when we refer to clean data in the kind of data analytics, data science world, we mean where Facebook always equals Facebook always equals Facebook. So for example, in your analytics, that everything's named consistently, so that I don't have Facebook with a capital F and with a lowercase f, so that I'm calling it Facebook, my colleague is naming it FB, right? That consistency, so that when I go in, I can easily make decisions because I can easily read it and know what it says. Messy data will give you inaccurate insights and can actually cause you to draw the wrong conclusions and make decisions that are not as beneficial. So clean data is super important. The next tip I have is go in with specific questions you want to answer. The vastness of the amount of data these different tools can collect can seem so daunting, especially if you're not like a super data nerd like I am. I go in there and I just love to be like, what can I find out? But if you're not a data nerd, you'll want to go in with specific questions to help you understand where you need to start. It informs your starting place. So some of those questions could be things like learning or wanting to ask which marketing efforts are driving the most traffic, which marketing efforts are driving the most engagement. Where are most of the people who are filling out this form going after they fill it out? Or which download on my website are people downloading most, right? Which one are they most interested in? So those are just a few examples. I hope that as I'm speaking, the wheels are kind of turning in your mind and you're starting to think about ways that you could ask questions and get those answers via data, because everything I listed there are things that data can help us answer. So tip number 3, always look at data in context. One number doesn't really tell us all that much, but when compared to the prior period or the prior year, it allows us to see changes over time. So I put this screenshot here where I'm comparing kind of 3 different numbers. And the first one is just sessions. So sessions is what Google Analytics uses to essentially calculate visits. So it's the same idea of like a time or an instance in which a user came to your website. So I see this number, 197,929 sessions. Okay, like that seems like a lot, but do I normally get 500,000 sessions? Do I normally get 20,000 sessions? Like, is this number high or is it low? I can't know just by looking at that number, which is why context is key. So I've included in here both looking at prior period. We can see, so that's that kind of middle metric. We can see if you look really closely, that green number says 12.8. So it was up 12.8 compared to the prior year or prior period, pardon me. And then if you look over to the right, one more column, you see compared to prior year, and it's up 237.9% over prior year. Now I'm starting to see that, okay, we are on an upward trajectory with sessions, and not just for the past month or whatever time frame I was looking at here, but year over year, we're on a significant upward trajectory. More people are spending more time or are coming to my site more. And so that is important to see and to know and to take note of. But without that context, I would have just been like, okay, 197,929 sessions. Cool. no, this is incredible. This is what we want to be seeing. This is the type of thing that you want to see in your analytics, but you can't get as excited about it if you don't have context. I mean, you could get excited, but I get extra excited with context. So I do want to take a minute to talk about some of the types of website analytics tools. The two most common web analytics tools out there are Adobe Analytics and Google Analytics. So Adobe Analytics is something that you have to pay for. It's very robust. There's a lot of really great things about it. We're going to talk mostly about Google Analytics, and the reason for that is because it's a free tool. It's also incredibly robust, and it integrates well with all of the other Google properties. So Google Ads, YouTube, Google Data Studio. And so that is the tool that I'm going to talk about kind of for those reasons for the remainder when we talk about like implementation pieces of this presentation. So next, we're going to dive into a little bit of implementation. So don't be scared. I'm not going to go too deep into the weeds, but I did want to talk a little bit about this because it's important and because it can greatly affect your data and your analytics. So I recommend using something called Google Tag Manager to place Google Analytics code on your website. It's essentially almost an identical process to adding the Google Analytics code, where they just give you a snippet of code, and it's called a container code. And then you don't have to keep editing the code on the back end of your site. It's two pieces of code, actually. One goes in the header and one goes just after the opening body tag. And any developer you talk to will know what you're talking about if you kind of talk about implementing this. But essentially, once that's on the site, you don't have to keep touching the code on the back end of your site. You implement everything through the Google Tag Manager interface. So it really streamlines it and makes it easier. And then you can include Google Analytics. You can also put things like Facebook pixels, Pinterest tags, any other kind of remarketing pixel you would have, you can implement via Google Tag Manager without actually editing the code on the back end of your website. So I do want to also point out, though, that Google Analytics code added directly to your website header will collect data properly. So if you are like, I don't know what this Google Tag Manager thing is, it sounds extra complicated, I just want the basic code on my website, that's perfectly fine. It makes it harder to add things like event tracking, which is where we get those outbound link clicks, scroll tracking, video views, etc., because those would have to be coded onto the website as well. Whereas with Google Tag Manager, you can just add them in there using the Google Tag Manager, or GTM as it's known kind of for short, the GTM interface. So it is important that your Google Analytics code be in the header of your website, though. And the reason for that is because as a website page loads, if just the header loads and then the navigation loads, and I see something that I want to click on in that navigation, but the rest of the page hasn't loaded, if I click over to, let's say I was going to the homepage and I see, oh, you have a blog, I want to check out the blog. So I click the button, I go over to the blog. But if that analytics code hasn't loaded lower down on the page, then unfortunately, I'm going to lose the information of where, or you're going to lose the information of where I, as a user, am coming into the website from. And you won't even see that I visited that first page. My first page on your site will be the blog if I'm there long enough for the code to load. So it used to be a best practice to put that code at the bottom in the footer of your website, and that is not the case anymore. We always recommend putting it in the header because I want to know everybody who comes to my site and all the pages they visit. I don't want to miss out on any of that valuable data when I'm making decisions. So I did include a couple of like URLs here. If you have developers, if you have a website and you don't have analytics on it, I would recommend looking at the support.google.com analytics section. This specific link will take you to how to add Google Analytics to your website. If you're like, I am here for this Google Tag Manager thing, I don't want to have to keep editing code on the back of my site. I want to implement this. I want to be able to go in and easily add event tracking and different things. There's also a link for that Google Tag Manager, how to implement that, how to set that up. So some good information there. I will say with Google Tag Manager, I definitely recommend also using consistency, like we talked about with kind of having clean data, consistency in naming just within the platform. It won't necessarily specifically affect your data, how you name things in the platform, but it definitely will help you later on as you're going back and like trying to add new things, like new events you want to track or things, if you have consistent naming structure in there. This screenshot little image that I included at the bottom here, this is just what the Google Analytics global site tag looks like. So as you can see, it's just a simple like string of code that any developer could add to your site. The Google Tag Manager container code looks very similar. There's just two pieces. Again, one goes in the header, one goes right after that opening body tag. And if you're not a developer or familiar with code, I'm probably speaking Greek to you, but your developer would know what I'm talking about, or if you send them kind of the instructions on how to do this. So next, we're going to talk about one of my favorite things, which are UTM tracking links. If you ask anyone at my company, I'm pretty sure they would tell you that I have this weird love of UTM tracking links. It's probably just because I'm a data nerd, and these are what feed data into my Google Analytics. And so of course I love them because they give me more data, more information with which to make decisions. So UTM tracking links are specific to Google Analytics. Remember earlier I said I'm going to talk about Google because it's a free tool. And so that means it's accessible to pretty much everybody. So this is the way that we tell Google the necessary information needed to track how people are getting to our website. Once you have Google Analytics on your site, you should use these anytime you are driving traffic to your website. You don't have to use them within your site. So if you have a blog post and you're going to link to your books page of your same website, you don't have to use them. But if you're doing an email outside or a social promotion or an ad campaign, you want to use these UTM tracking links. Again, this is how we get clean data, by using these across all of our marketing, all of our places that we're driving traffic to our website. So how do you create them? These wonderful things called UTM tracking links. You can create them using Google's campaign URL builder. Google created this online tool. I included the link to it. And you just kind of fill everything in, and it spits out the link at the bottom here. And you can just copy paste that. Now, I will say, again, consistency is key. We're going to talk about that in a minute. These can also be shortened if you want to put them on social media, because as you can see, like, this is kind of ugly. This is not a pretty link. So definitely you can shorten them using something like a Bitly shortener or a Google shortener. It won't break the UTM tracking parameters. Also, fun fact, UTM, you're probably wondering what that stands for. It stands for Urchin Tracking Module, because Google used to be owned by Urchin. Google Analytics used to be Urchin, and then Google bought it. Anyways, it used to be Urchin. Now it's Google. So, but they're still called UTM tracking links. So critical pieces of that UTM tracking link. Again, we want to make sure that we're feeding the right data in so we can make the right decisions. So the source, this is where someone is coming from to get to your website. So this is Facebook, Google, Pinterest, whatever that is. Again, consistency is key here. Medium, this is the avenue through which they came to your site. So it could be CPC for an ad campaign. It could be social. It could be email. So the way that this can work is you can have a Facebook social post. So your source would be Facebook and your medium would be social, but you could also have a Facebook ad campaign where your source is Facebook and your medium is CPC. And this allows us to look at both, okay, all of my traffic from Facebook, people on Facebook, what are they interested in? But also be able to separate it out and say, okay, people organically finding my content on social media or on Facebook specifically, what are they interested in? And specifically people from my Facebook ad campaigns, what are they interested in and engaging with? So it kind of allows us different ways to both bucket our data into large kind of chunks and also to separate it out to get, again, those really great insights. The third piece that is required for a UTM tracking link is the campaign. This is essentially your marketing campaign name, often a seasonal campaign like Spring 2020 or the book title itself. I will say I do not recommend using the ISBN. And the reason for that is because, like, maybe you know your ISBNs and exactly from just looking at that string of numbers could tell which book that was or what campaign that was, but I am not that skilled. And so I always use something a little bit more descriptive. So the title or something seasonal is helpful. So some more best tips and best practices. Again, as I've been saying, consistency is key. You want to make sure that you're using the same naming. So don't use FB for Facebook one time and then Facebook the next time. Have a consistent naming strategy. And if you have multiple people, maybe you have a couple different people helping you with marketing, I would recommend setting up some kind of a document about this is how we're going to name things. So we have at HarperCollins Christian Publishing some naming standards. If you're posting or doing ads on Facebook, it's Facebook, all lowercase, every time. And that allows us to easily know what to name things and also to be able to have that consistency and clean data. Never use capital letters. Now, this is not something that is a Google best practice. This is a Victoria best practice. Again, though, the reason for this is because Facebook with a lowercase f and Facebook with an uppercase f in your Google UTM parameters when they come in will be two separate lines of data. So then anytime you want to get an idea of your entire Facebook traffic, you have to go in and manually like do the math to add those lines together. And I don't know about you, but I just don't have time for that. So I always say, always use lowercase letters. That way I don't have to ever worry about having capitalization cause me to have to manually do math when I just want to go in and easily see my traffic from Facebook. I keep using Facebook as an example. This is obviously an example across any kind of marketing you would be doing. My other recommendation is never use spaces or special characters. The UTM parameters you choose will be a part of the website URL. So spaces and special characters just kind of mess up URLs. Like you would never see a space in a URL. So that can increase the likelihood actually that your link will break. And so I just recommend across the board, don't use them. You can use dashes, and we do that sometimes because again, dashes are a normal thing to see in a website URL. And then as I mentioned earlier, you can shorten UTM links when they're going to be user facing. No one really wants to see that super long, ugly link on a social media post or anything else that's user facing. So it is recommended that once you've created your UTM link that you go ahead and run it through a shortener. It will not affect the ability for Google to read those UTM parameters. All right, y'all are doing great. We're gonna look at some reports now. So we've kind of journeyed through why data is important, a little bit about some initial pieces, looking at how do we like even figure out what questions we need to answer with our data. We've looked at some implementation. What are these crazy things Victoria loves that are called UTM tracking links? And now we're going to actually look at some reports and reporting. Again, these are screenshots from Google Analytics because it's a really accessible and robust tool. So I talked about audience and how important it is. There's this whole audience overview section that gives you a ton of information. So the audience section is one of the like buckets within Google Analytics. The overview is a super great way to get a quick view of who are the people who are coming to my site. And then you can dive in to more of the different kind of demographics and interests, geography, behavior even, devices, and some of those other pieces. But I recommend like a starting ground if you're not familiar with analytics tools would be to look at the overview. Now, if you are familiar with analytics tools, a couple of my favorites are, I love to look at the interests, I love to look at behavior and demographics to help understand who's coming to my site, what else are they interested in, and kind of what behaviors do they exhibit. The second one is that source medium report. This is in what's called the acquisition section. So acquisitions are like, how did people come to find our site? And source medium is where you're going to see those UTM parameters that you put in. And that is where I go pretty much all the time. It's the report probably that I look at the most because I'm often trying to analyze, is our marketing effective? Are people getting here and are they sticking around? Where are they coming in from? All of those kinds of pieces. So I spend a lot of time in this source medium report. The next report that I spend a lot of time in is the behavior overview. So it's the one that's in blue there under behavior in this screenshot all the way on the right. And this gives us just a general overview of what people are doing on our website. If you want to get a little more advanced, you can take a look at things like site content, where you can actually see what pages are people visiting the most. There's things about site speed. So how fast is your website loading? Are there pages that are loading really slow? This is a great place to look. If you find that people who come to a specific page kind of fall off your website, this is a great place to find out, okay, is that page loading really slow? And that's why people are they're not patient enough, right? In today's society, if a page doesn't load really quick, we nope out so easily. So great place to look at that. Site search, which we'll talk a little bit about later, and events, which I mentioned are where you can see things like what people are doing on your site, what they're engaging with, are they downloading things, watching videos. So those are some of the more advanced reports. But if you're really new to analytics tools, which there's no shame in starting your analytics journey at any time. It's never too late to start. That overview, that behavior overview is a great place to start. And so bonus, that event or conversion reports are incredibly valuable if you have that tracking set up. Now, it's not out of the box tracking that will be set up just by putting the initial code on your site. So conversions or events require additional setup, but if you have them, those are great places to look to understand what people are doing on your site and what they're interacting with. So next, see what users search for. This is that site search piece. I get really excited about site search. So there are kind of two ways you can look at how, like, what users are searching for and how that affects your website. One is that if you have Google Search Console, another free Google tool, if you have it set up, you can see what organic searches drove traffic to your website. So you can set up Google Search Console really easily. Again, it's free. You can connect it to your Google Analytics, and then you can literally see what searches were typed into Google that actually, like, your site came up organically and then drove traffic to that people like clicked through. So that helps us understand how are people searching for the content that we have on our site. What are actual users typing into search, and can help even inform your SEO strategy. So the other kind of half of the screen over here, the right side, we're going to look at search terms. So this is that report that I said I kind of geek out about. If your site has search capabilities within the website, so if there's a search bar within your actual website, you can easily set up what are called site search, or what is called site search, and see what the users are typing into that search bar. It sounds super creepy. Again, that cartoon I put at the beginning, like, there's a lot that we can learn about what people are doing in relation to our website. So the easy way that you set it up, that red box towards the top, within your Google Analytics view settings, you just go down to this site search section. You could toggle it on, and then there's this little checkbox that says strip query parameters out of URL. And if you check that checkbox, Google's going to automatically look for what are the query parameters, because every time, this is going to be really technical for a minute, every time someone searches for something on your site, there's a query parameter that essentially tells Google this is a search. Someone searched for this. And Google has a way to crawl that and kind of pull that out of the URL. And then, like, this will start tracking. That's all you have to do. And then it will start tracking the site search that's on your website. And you can see the reports of what are people typing into that bar, that search bar on your site. Which the ways that I use this is to see which books are most popular, which blog like topics are most popular. Are there things that people are searching for on our site that they think that we've posted about or have content about that we actually don't have content for, but could create content for? So this is a great way to kind of mine your own data and your own audience and see what do they want that I don't currently offer, but could write about or could talk about. So the next piece, once you've kind of got comfortable with some initial reports, is layering dimensions. So my favorite dimension to layer onto almost any report is that source medium. So when you layer it, so for example, the screenshot I have here is from the event report and specifically the event action. So we can see here things like product click, add to cart, different options there. And then when you add this layer of adding this secondary dimension of source medium, which is literally just a drop-down menu in Google, there's like a little drop-down menu above the table and you just click one and choose one. And so you add that in and you can see, okay, so they had some, it looks like some display ads, CPM, so cost per 1,000 impressions here. And they also had some CPC ads, and we can see which ones are driving these quick view clicks. I don't know what a quick view click is. This screenshot was taken from a like demo account. And so this isn't actually our data. So I don't know what a quick view click is, but looking at a product click, I know what that is. We can see that, some ads at DFA were, causing this, these product clicks. Now, I do want to point out anytime in the source medium that you see direct/none, this means that either someone clicked over from a link that did not have those UTM parameters. So they could have come from an email or a social post or really anything, but we don't know. This is also people who like actually type in, your website So, HarperCollins, ChristianPublishing.com, like those are going to come in as direct none because Google's like, I don't know. They just typed it in and got here. I don't know how they got here because it didn't have that data fed into it. So this is why it's important to use those UTM parameters, because the smaller your direct none bucket is, the greater overall insight you have into where people are coming from. So at the beginning of this presentation, we looked at what does it look like to do marketing without analytics. And so I want to talk about now, just kind of as one of the wrap-up pieces of what does it look like to do marketing with analytics. And I'm hoping and praying that by this point, I have convinced you to be a little bit of a data nerd, that it's not scary if you come in with specific questions. But let's go back to that scenario. You have a website, but this time you have Google Analytics set up. You've gone above and beyond. You've added some of those outbound link click events and set those up on your site. And then you have a new book coming out. So you decide to write a blog post in which you link to a retailer for users to purchase your book. Then you decide to post to both Pinterest and Facebook to drive traffic to the blog post on your website. If you used UTM tracking links for both your Pinterest and Facebook posts, you will be able to tell which social post drove traffic to your site, which platform are the users engaging more with your site once they get there. And you can even get as granular as to say people from Pinterest actually went through to click that purchase button more than people from Facebook. And so you can really get those nitty-gritty answers. So you can decide to focus marketing efforts on one platform over the other. You can use the data that you gather. It'll provide insights into where users on your different social channels are in the purchase journey. So maybe from your data, you're like, okay, I can see here that people on Pinterest are more ready to purchase, whereas people on Facebook are just kind of looking and they're higher up in that purchase journey. This can change maybe where you're spending, again, your time, your money, some of those pieces. So this is kind of that flip side of marketing without analytics and marketing with analytics. So the last thing I want to talk about is additional resources. And this slide doesn't look exciting, but I promise you it actually is, because Google has a free analytics course. So let's say I've convinced you by this point, you are ready to learn about data more than you maybe already know, because you may already know some things about data. They have their own course about how to use the platform. So if you are excited to kind of use an analytics platform, they also have their support portal, which has lots of help as well. Bounteous is an organization. They have a blog. I really appreciate their insights blog. There's things about Google Tag Manager, about Google strategy type pieces as well. It's not specific to Google because you don't have to use Google, right? I talked about that the most simply because it's a free tool, so it's accessible to everyone. But insights related strategy applies across any tool that you're using. And then Social Media Examiner, they have a blog with some Google Analytics basics, which is what I linked to, but they also have lots of other social analytics strategy related content, other digital analytics related content. And then if you're really looking for something advanced, there are two blogs that I absolutely love. One is by Simo Haba, and he has blogs about all kinds of different digital marketing areas. And he does have a whole bunch of blogs about analytics. So, but again, these are going to be that more kind of very technical sometimes, or very advanced level. Same thing with Avinash Kaushik. So kaushik.net is his blog. Super great analytics strategy. His is more focused specifically on analytics as opposed to other parts of digital marketing, but it is going to be a little bit more advanced. They try to write it in a way that's easy to understand, but if you are brand new to the analytics world, I would recommend some of those blogs above, like Bounteous's or Social Media Examiner. And then once you get a little bit more comfortable diving into things from Simo Haba and Avinash Kaushik. So with that, I believe the only thing left is questions. So are there any questions? I'm gonna look over and see in the comments.
Hi, thank you so much. I saw a bunch of comments on similar to Jerry's last presentation of gotta take notes, gotta apply, So they're firing up to actually apply what they're learning.
Yes, we've made some people hopefully into kind of data nerds and people getting excited about data. That makes me so happy.
So what are your recommendations as a business practice for scheduling analytics?
Yeah, so I try to recommend, looking at analytics at least once a week. Like once you get it implemented, in that initial implementation stage, I check it pretty frequently to make sure like my data is coming in correctly, the tags are on my site correct, and everything's, actually coming in. I'm able to have that data. But once it's set up, I recommend checking it at least just once a week, and you don't have to do a deep dive, right? You can just come in and see, okay, like, has there been any significant change to my audience am I seeing significant changes in traffic? And then the other piece is whenever you want to do reporting, right? Whenever you want to answer those questions of like, how's my marketing doing? Or I had this specific campaign, like I did a big Easter campaign and now I'm curious if, what that looked like, right? So throughout that campaign, you might check it if it's an ongoing campaign a little more frequently, and then at the end to get that kind of roll up of how it performed.
Okay. And I actually just have a follow up to that. So what could be a next step? So if you saw a change, either in the positive or negative, say you did a campaign and you're like, this didn't move the needle, or wow, this really did well. Like, what are kind of some tips for next step?
Yeah. So if you see that it didn't move the needle, then I'd want to be looking at things like, okay, so let's say I'm going to kind of set the stage with an example. I'm hoping that this will apply to this question well. But let's say I did a marketing campaign and I'm driving to my my site and I'm trying to get people to click a retailer button to actually go purchase my book. Okay. So I drove my campaign. I'm not seeing what I would expect. Then I'm assuming that I already know that my analytics is tracking properly, like it's been set up for a while. I would want to look at a couple of things. I would want to look at that page load time. Did people actually stay on here long enough for the buttons? Like, did they load quick enough that people could actually even click them, or did people kind of just like leave? And I would want to look at if this was a page that people left from. I would also want to know, have people, like, are they unable to find that link? Are they unable to find the content they're looking for? So maybe looking at some scroll tracking, like, are people actually getting to that point on the page? Again, related to that site load time as well. And I also would look at like, okay, who's my audience? Does it seem like things are resonating? Because the way that I kind of like to talk about it is it's the marketing's job to get someone to the website. And so if we're seeing like, we're not even seeing the traffic, right? Like even if it's not a situation of they got to the site, but they didn't click the button. If it's a situation where they didn't even like click over to the site, then that tells me that something wasn't compelling or clear about my marketing. But if they did get to the site, then that tells me, okay, once they get to the site, it's my page's responsibility to kind of convert them or get them to take that action that I wanted them to take. So was there a clear call to action? Is there continuity between the marketing they saw and the page they landed on? Did they land where they expected to? Or did we talk about a free download, but then we landed them on a page where that free download is all the way at the bottom and they didn't even see it, right? And so it's kind of trying to figure out where's the disconnect? What happened? And it's kind of hard to just give a general example. So I hope that kind of helped as far as the scenario where we didn't see something positive. Go ahead.
No, I said that was super helpful. Yeah.
Okay, great. So if you do see something positive, so let's say which I hope happens to every single one of you, you drive marketing, you're like, oh my word, people like actually like 100% of people who came over from my marketing downloaded the thing I wanted them to download. That's great. I would recommend if it was like a post on social, maybe you post again, similarly, trying to learn from that strategy. I would also recommend, whenever we have like a 100% conversion rate on something, we do just want to make sure that our tags are all like firing properly, that the analytics is collecting data, because I would hate for that to be incorrect, right? And so there's kind of two avenues of like, first, make sure that it's actually real. And then if it is, okay, what can I learn from this? How can I do this next time? Should I put more money behind this? So those are kind of how I would look at those pieces if it is positive.
Okay, that's very helpful. And I think for us in attending this conference as a takeaway, Jerry's presentation try to get all of those pieces in place and then look at Victoria's. And then from what you learned from Jerry, you should hopefully convert because your message is clear. And now we're doing the analytics piece. That's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how long do you consider holding on analytics review when posting new content? How long should it live on the site?
Yeah, great question. So I think if I'm understanding correctly, the question is like, once I post content, how long am I waiting before I'm actually doing analysis based upon it? Is that correct?
I think that's the essence
Okay.
of it. Yep.
So if it's like a social post that you're driving traffic, I would say you can do that analysis probably, it's all a little bit subjective, because if you're promoting something and saying, this is a sale for the next 72 hours, obviously after the sale ends is when you want to start looking at that data. But otherwise, social media, you can look at it, I would say 72 hours-ish. Google does take up to 24 hours to fully aggregate your data. That's an important note that I failed to mention earlier. But so I almost never recommend looking at same-day data. You can look at it to get an idea, like, okay, people are coming in, but don't make any big decisions on specifically same-day data. As far as like if you're posting to your site in the sense of like a blog, you can look at it on that initial day and say like, okay, there's traffic coming in. Because when you do a new blog post, you're probably also promoting it. So I would recommend, again, you can look at it to get a general idea. People are coming into the site, they're seeing this page, but I would wait, again, a few days before really doing analysis. And I would recommend doing that analysis kind of periodically, just looking at like, are there pages that are most popular on my site? Are there blog posts people are searching for? Again, if you have that site search set up, you can see like, oh, people really search for this particular page all the time, or this particular blog content. Maybe I can write some more content around that, topic, a similar topic, and link to each other. So I hope that helps kind of answer both from the social media post or like a blog post type of perspective.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I see that we're creeping in on time for Marquis' presentation, so maybe we can take one more questions. And we did have a couple follow-up questions. I don't know if we can share that with you, and if you...
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be happy to answer any follow-up questions as well.
Awesome. Thank you. So this last one, does Lower Dash work with UTM?
So like almost like an underscore, I think is what you're mentioning. They do. They should work. Again, I would recommend sticking to just regular dashes if possible. If you need to use an underscore, I have seen that come through okay and not be an issue because that is another piece that you would normally see in a URL. So that would be okay. But staying away from other kind of special characters like exclamation points and symbols and things like that is what we would more recommend. So yes, I would say dashes as well as the like underscore lower dash would be fine.
Okay. Maybe we'll take one final question and just the 3 minutes. I don't know, we can go beyond that, but I thought this one was helpful. Would you recommend universal book links added to your website, one link, or adding a personal store add cart feature on the website?
Yeah, that is a really great question. I think it kind of depends upon your overall digital strategy. If you want to create your own store, that's a little bit more work, right, than just driving traffic to a retailer. So I think if you're able to do that, it's a really great thing to have your own e-commerce. But again, if you don't have the capability to do that, that's totally fine. I am a proponent of linking to multiple places because, for example, I have friends who will not shop on Amazon, but I have other friends who buy everything on Amazon, right? And so like, I want to include that Amazon link, but also a couple others in case there are those people who are pro or against certain retailers. So just giving them places, because if people have places they're comfortable shopping and they can buy it there, they're more likely. That lowers the barrier to conversion. So.
Absolutely. I think you're very right. So I just want to give you 1 minute to close out and any closing thought. That would be great.
Yeah. So first of all, I want to thank you all for coming and letting me kind of geek out about data with you. I hope that this has been super helpful and that you've, that you're feeling excited about diving into data and looking at how you can, improve your marketing and your content creation based upon those insights you're learning from your data. And I look forward to the follow-up questions. I will be happy to answer any of those that get sent my way. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. And would you be able to share your presentation as well so we can share that out?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. All right. Thank you so much, Victoria. Appreciate your time.
Yes. Thank you.
All right. Okay, guys, stick around. At 5 o'clock, we are having Marky Freeman, who is going to be discussing the power of authorship. So you don't want to miss it. Take a little break, get some water, do some jumping jacks, walk around, say hello to your family, chat with a friend, do something good for your health, and then come back here at 5 o'clock to hear Marky share with us the power of authorship. So we'll see you soon. Bye.